Alright, we're here for our first match with Mono Blue Tron. We're on the play, which is nice. Taking a look at our opening hand here, we have Blue Source, Academy of Ruins, Urza's Saga, or Urza's Mine. Have Trinket Mage, potentially find either a map or some other piece of interaction. I have Condescend and Dismember, so pretty solid opening hand overall. We lead on Urza's Mine Go. Opponent leads on Forest into Amulets. So, next turn we could have played Power Plane here, but I think it was more important to hold up Condescend, because Amulet could start doing stupid things from this turn forward. Opponent goes ahead and explores. In an attempt to slow them down, I Condescend here, knowing that I'm probably going to Trinket Mage next turn. So, Trinket Mage could find Expedition Map, get the Mix and Tron piece here, but with the second one, I think we need a way to keep our opponent potentially from getting Titan or Dryad or any of that nonsense if they don't have it naturally in their hand. So our options are Chalice, Map, Relic, which not really the matchup for Relic, and Walking Ballista is more of a finisher in this style of matchup. So it's pretty easy to get a Chalice here, play a Chalice on 0, and kind of lock our opponent out from playing any type of packs for whatever. Just play out that, start getting a little bit of a clock going here, holding up Condescend, so we're starting to get into the territory where our opponent can do stupid things. I should have Condescended that potentially, but I choose to Dismember it instead. So they're going to get a little bit of mana, but then they just have to, they return it to their hand anyway. So, not quite sure what our opponent was hoping to accomplish there. We draw all the Storm Giants. Once again, time to be patient here, especially since we have the counterspell anyway. Then we draw Mine, so we don't have hard counterspell, but we do have Expedition Map to get the final piece. And then our opponent looks like they might go for a Titan here since we're tapped low on mana. We go ahead and Condescend this Titan for 2. I'll like some Spirit Guides in the format, but may as well top that Remand. Go ahead and play Expedition Map, get the missing tower here, just continue to beat down, hold up Remand in case they draw, get another Titan. Could have potentially played Engineered Explosives on 1 here, but opponent once again going for a Titan. We remand them. Pass turn. And now we can just kill them. So, all the Storm Giants plus Trinket Mages tempoing the opponent out. Nice to pick up a win there. On to game number 2. Alright, as far as game number 2, we brought in Spreading Seas primarily, and then boarded out a copy of Repeal. Probably also boarded out the Relic version of this. Spreading Seas just kind of mess with their mana a little bit. Also a way to attack Urza's Saga. So, not a whole lot to board in now. I think we also boarded out Ugin and a Talisman simply because they're not that well positioned. So, let's take a look on the draw, see if we can keep up with a deck like Amulet. 2 blue mana, has a Condescend, has a couple of Repeals, has a Trinket Mage. Seems like a pretty reasonable keep. Opponent also keeps 7. They lead on that. We go ahead and play this. They're going to get quite a nice start going here, unfortunately, with Dryad into that. And have another land, so opponent has 4 mana in play. Just hold up Condescend here, potentially Repeal on their end step for Amulet, or for Amulet of Vigor. They make a copy of it, which is fine. We draw another land, which we kind of needed to do. We now have a plan. We have a Sundering Titan plan. Just buy ourselves as much time as possible. Engineered explosives would be a good draw at this point. Opponent decides to do some stupid stuff, make a bunch of mana for no reason apparently. They return the actual Simic Growth Chamber to their hand. Once again, really doesn't do a whole lot. Especially since you want to be making land drops with your Valakut in play. Opponent does this. We go ahead and repeal the Dryad. Draw a Remand. Blow up their Urza Saga with Tectonic Edge. Opponent can make a ton of mana here, so we're not going to really get very far. What we're really looking for is a 5th land so we can kind of potentially tap out for Trinket Mage, get map, and set up for Sundering Titan. But our opponent besieges our Urza's Tower, which is annoying, but whole lot of decks doing nothing here. When you continue to take 2 a turn. We have plenty of remands, which are fine, but not great in the face of bounce land plus triple Amulet. We go ahead and rewind, bouncing their Dryad. Once again, just trying to hit more land drops here. At this point, we tap out for Trinket Mage to get the Expedition map. Opponent will probably have to make a move this turn. They decide to play bounce land. Do the bouncy. One of the annoying things we got about playing against Titan is just how many triggers they have. They have an Azusa, sure. They once again get a bunch of mana here. They play Dryad, which we have to let resolve. They once again play another bounce land. Looks like they're going to go for a Titan here. We do have 2 remands up, so we can potentially time walk them, although I think they have enough mana in play at this point to cast and resolve Titan twice. We go ahead and remand that. We play it again. We remand it again. They can do nothing here. We hope to draw land. We do not. Play Trinket Mage. Grab EE. Play EE. Blow up all their amulets. Put Expedition map into play. So, it blows up our Expedition map, which is whatever. Now with that amulet in play, they're kind of a sitting duck. If we ever top deck their 8th land, it's an untapped land. We at least have Condescend here unless they rip Cavern of Souls. So they go for Titan. We Condescend here. Once again, knowing that we have... we just go ahead and keep Remand. But after this turn, our opponent's not going to have any lands, so, you know. The 7-10 split, and our opponent concedes because they're going to have no lands. We have the superior board presence. And if nothing else, Mindslaver and or Walking Ballista will allow us to finish this game off quite easily, not to mention all the other options that we have here. So, nice to pick up a win. This is actually the 2nd match in League. The first match was kind of a slugfest with Blue-Red, or with Jeskai Breach that I'm not going to get into because there was a whole lot of game actions in that one. But this is the first match we're going to show, and we have 2 more interesting matches for you. Alright, after the 2nd match, we were on the play, which is nice. This hand doesn't do much. We have no blue mana. We have Expedition map, so it could be a keep. We have Repeal, Condescend. But that felt like a mulligan. This hand at least has Sundering Titan in it. We have no blue mana again, so once again, might be a mulligan. If we were on the draw, this hand would probably be keepable because of Caverns, but I end up keeping this hand and put back Caverns. Interesting. lead on Urza's Tower, go. Opponent plays Scalding Tarn into Sacred Foundry. So Goblin Guide, Burn, drawing Expedition Map, which is nice. At least it's slow, but it's a blue mana source. So one of the matchups we really can't afford to kind of putz around. And of course is the match where we're putzing around. So Eidolon. Going to play Island, play Expedition Map. Dealing ourselves a bunch of damage. Our opponent plays just really excellent burn start. We're kind of puttering around here, and there's not going to be anything we can draw at this point that can get us out of it. We need like Wormcoil Engine or Walking Ballista with a bunch of mana, and that just isn't happening as we have a very, very slow, kind of clunky start. You might get away with that against something like Murktide or something if they don't have a Ragavan start, or, you know, but alas, on to game number 2. All right, not a lot we want to bring in. We want to bring in the one copy of Spell Pierce. We want to bring in the Spatial Contortions, board out the Dismembers and the Sundering Titan just because they're a little bit slow. Could potentially have boarded in the extra copy of Engineered Explosives, but just feels a little bit slow. And Nimble Obstructionist, not the best in this matchup. So this hand, obviously no lands, can't keep it. This hand is kind of a similar situation. No blue sources, bunch of clunky spells. So this hand I can work with. We've got blue mana, we've got Chalice, we've got Snapcaster Mage. I think this hand will be put back. Obstructionist, Cyclonic Rift, use Snapcaster as a trade or chump blocker. And just hope Chalice is kind of good enough to buy us enough time to get set up here. So put back Snapcaster Mage. I guess I'm playing around Searing Blaze potentially. Opponent leads on Swizzle Spear. Sure. We go ahead and play out Chalice on one. Opponent attacks us. They skewer the critics. Suspend Rift Bolt. We go ahead and pass here. We can either potentially Thirst for Knowledge or Cyclonic Rift, depending on how much damage this Swizzle Spear is going to threaten. And it looks like our opponent's going to threaten us with a lot, so we have to bounce it. And notably, they cannot recast it. They're a little bit stuck on lands, which is nice. Condescend is good here. Once again, Thirst for Knowledge and company. We do have Tron assembled, so that's nice, but we get rid of Expedition Map. Was there actually a reason to consider holding on to Expedition Map? The Expedition Map, we could have gotten Academy Ruins, or I don't think Blast Zone's in this list. We could have gotten Academy Ruins. We could have gotten Teleria West, but Teleria West not as good when you only have 2 blue sources, so, or 1 blue source in play. So do that. Go ahead and Condescend here, it looks like. Put a Trinket Mage on top, because that allows us to potentially finish off the game at least. I probably should have tapped out for Trinket Mage at this point. Just because we're so restricted on blue mana here. Okay, now I tap out for Trinket Mage. Grabbing what? Ballista? Nope, Chalice for 2. Okay, so we play Chalice for 2, and our opponent concedes to that. So, yeah. Probably should have grabbed this, played that Trinket Mage last turn, forgetting about the Chalice. The one thing I will just say about Shocktroopa's version of the list, as opposed to the Karn list, is the decision trees are quite insane with Trinket Mages and Expedition Maps and, you know, all that stuff. You wouldn't think a card that fetches only 1 mana or less would be that valuable, but when you have Ballista and Chalice and Expedition Map, etc., Engineered Explosives, you know, definitely a relevant card, and we got there in game number 2 On to game number 3. All right, game number 3, looking at sideboarding, we don't really change anything, so hopefully we can beat Burn on the draw. Chalice, Condescend, Snapcaster, Trinket Mage, functional lands, hand seems reasonable, definitely a keep. Obviously we're vulnerable to an early creature, but you know, you only have so many things when you're not willing to leave Dismember in your deck, so opponent goes ahead and Rift Bolts us here, which is totally fine. Opponent has an Eidolon. So, choice here is play Chalice or attempt to block with Snappy. Choose to play Chalice. Opponent attacks us for 2, puts us to 13. Again, probably going to have to block with Snapcaster. They Boros Burn us here, which is neither here nor there. Snapcaster block, attempt to block. Hope they don't have Searing Blaze in their deck. Opponent does the thing here. Holding up Condescend. Probably should have at least played Expedition map there, but I guess we're doing Thirst for Knowledge instead. Boros Burn put us to 3. Put map in the bin. We get another land. Kind of in this weird holding pattern because our counter spells aren't really that good here. Because they're taxing our mana every turn. Probably should cast Thirst for Knowledge here. I agree. They do what they do. Talisman. Wurmcoil Engine's tempting, but it really doesn't get us anywhere. Because if they have a 3 damage spell, we're just dead. Or, you know, either a 3 or 2 mana spell, we're dead. So, possibly should have played Wurmcoil here with, I guess Spell Pierce doesn't protect us because of Chalice. We go ahead and cast Remand. Opponent casts Eidolon. We cast Condescend for 3. Which was a mistake because we could have got potentially by a Skewer or something. So, play Trinket Mage. Yes, go get Chalice. Once again, holding up Remand here. Opponent cast Skullcrack. Go ahead and Condescend for 2. Opponent suspends Rift Bolt yet again. Urza's Tower. Go ahead and swing in a Trinket Mage here. Chalice for 3 to blank their thing. Should have just tapped out for Wurmcoil Engine at this point, since I don't have a counterspell that's relevant anyway. And our opponent just does the Skullcrack and we're dead. So, close game. It's possible I should have tried to take an opportunity to get Wurmcoil down sooner. Trinket Mage, I don't think could get anything here. Could have put a Chalice on 2, but we were just dead to the Rift Bolt if we did that anyway. So, you know, we almost locked the Burn players out, but you know, they still had 14 or 15 spells in their deck that were possibly live, and of course they happen to have one of them in their 7-card hand. So, it does show the flexibility of this deck, though. The fact that we were almost able to beat Burn in a best of 3 set. So, anyways, on to the third match. For our third Magic gameplay, taking a look at our first opening hand. We are in the draw. This hand does have the same lack of blue mana, or at least quick blue mana. The upside of this hand is quick Tron and Walking Ballista as a payoff, so I think we end up keeping this hand just because of the flexibility of the Expedition map and the 2 Tron pieces. And our opponent leads on turn 1 Steam Vents into Tome Scour. Dredge it is. Alright, go ahead and play Expedition map because we have nothing else to do. Opponent plays Otherworldly Gaze. Dredging Stinky. Could potentially have held up Remand here, which might have been correct. Remand, Condescend. We wanted to get Tron online, hoping to get a big payoff. Our opponent is threatening Life from the Loam into Otherworldly Gaze. We go ahead and remand that, continuing to get ahead on cards here. Chalice or Walking Ballista on 2 while holding up Condescend. Worrying about Ox of Agonis here, as well as, yeah, just basically worried about Ox. Opponent just cast Surprised Amalgam, cast Life from the Loam, passes turn. We draw Chalice, which doesn't do a ton on this board, as we're still having to hold up. They can Flagrate us. Go ahead and play Ox. We counter this because Ox is just too dangerous at this point. Because if that comes back, then all of these creatures are coming back. He plays Otherworldly Gaze. Hits a Narcomoeba and gets to bring the entire troop back anyway. So they get Amalgam back. Put a counter on Ballista. Again, Chalice potentially could have been pretty good here if I had thought about it correctly. And then, you know, we're just kind of overwhelmed by this board position. But, you know, one thing I will say about Blue Tron, at least the way Shocktroopa builds it, is you've got options. Whether you use them right or not, I guess that takes experience and knowing matchups, etc. So, anyways, on to game number 2. Alright, sideboarding options. We had some. You basically had a couple copies of Leyline. I believe there was another Graveyard Hate piece, and then you had Spell Pierce to bring in, board out the Dismembers just because they don't do much. Sundering Titan. They do have some dual lands in their deck, but most of their deck is now like Mana Confluence and City of Brass, so just not quite as good. Taking a look at our opening hand. Well, we've got Leyline. I'm pretty sure we're kind of locked into keeping those hands, so. Reveal Leyline. Play Urza's Tower or Urza's Mine out. Opponent does the thing here. We draw a second copy of Gemstone Caverns, which isn't particularly useful here, but it's potentially a Lotus Petal. Opponent casts an Narcomoeba, sure. We draw Urza's Mine again, so we have 3 mana up here for a repeal potentially, or 3 mana repeal potentially. Just take the hit from the Narcomoeba. Opponent plays a Silver Smoot Ghoul. We go ahead and bounce that just to slow the drawdown. Cycle once again, trying to hit lands. Opponent bashes in. We really want to get to this Wormcoil Engine. Cyclonic Rift could potentially buy us some time. It does things. We go ahead and bounce Silver Smoot Ghoul again. Opponent plays Silver Smoot Ghoul again. They play Otherworldly Gaze, presumably looking for a way out to this Leyline. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We just play Wormcoil Engine, and our opponent's D game plan can't beat Wormcoil Engine. So we were going to be able to back that up potentially next turn with an overloaded Cyclonic Rift and Remand. So, seems like we were well on our way to victory, but, you know, Leyline the Void will do that if your opponent's not expecting it out of your deck. Alright, game number 3. Once again, sideboarding very similar. We are on the draw, have Leyline again. Once again, I think we're kind of priced into keeping this hand, whether we want to or not. Rest of the hand's not particularly functional. Go ahead and play Leyline out. Opponent does the thing here, plays Otherworldly Gaze, looking presumably for an answer to this. We play that, play Map out. Obviously, we're really opening ourselves up to something like a Force of Vigor, but opponent doesn't have that many green cards. They blow up the Leyline. We potentially get Tron online here. Go ahead and get the Power Plant, play Talisman. Go ahead and slow them down with a Remand. Play Walking Ballista here just to get a clock down while holding up Condescend. Once again, just trying to slow them down. Relic, nice card to have. Play Nimble Obstructionist. Pass the turn. Play Relic, pop Relic immediately. Start clocking them. Opponent plays a Stinkweed Imp. We counter. See a Teleria West on top. Both to the bottom. Go ahead and pump Ballista here. And that should do it. So, Leyline buys us time. We draw out, get threats down, counter the relevant spells for a couple turns, and just close out the game. Kind of becomes this very slow, kind of pseudo version of like post-board Living Under Rhinos, where you get this like dorky beats plan with like Nimble Obstructionist or Snapcaster Mage or Trinket Mage, and then backing it up with some counter spells. I mean, still works in Modern sometimes. So the one thing I'll say about this variant by Shocktroopa, I mean, the man knows how to craft a deck. I mean, Gemstone Cavern helps with the speed problem of the deck. Blast Zone helps you with dealing with early rushes. Academy Ruins lets you rebuy all of your artifacts. You know, all the Tron lands. Teleria West also serves as a pseudo. Find all your lands. Find all your 0 mana hate pieces. Trinket Mage is a way to search for, you know, Expedition Map or Relic or Ballista or Chalice or EE, or in post-board games. Yeah, basically the same options. The rest of the deck, you know, one of Talisman of Dominance seems random, but you do need a number of artifacts for Thirst for Knowledge. You have early interaction with Remains and Condescends. You have Repeals and Cyclonic Rifts to buy you time. You have Dismembers. You have Nimble Obstructionist. Card we didn't get to see function too much in the game sets that I chose to play, but it had a couple of interesting moments against the Jeskai Breach deck, turning off the ability of Grounding Station for a turn, which was hilarious. But I digress. Wormcoil Engine, obviously a nice thing. Mindslaver, you have the potential for the Mindslaver lock when you have Tron plus this, plus Academy Ruins going. Sundering Titan, we got to see that absolutely decimate poor Dryad Amulet Titan. And then Ugin, just a nice one of. The sideboard, you know, we got to see most of these cards in action, or at least bring them in. You know, Spell Pierces for the Urza Saga decks or Tron decks. Dispute and Spell Pierce against the various decks you're fighting against that might need, you know, Spell Pierce is cheap early interaction. Mystical Dispute when you're fighting over counter spells usually. Ley Lines, we saw those come up huge in the Dredge matchup. Third copy of Dismember when you just need more interaction for things like turn 1 Ragavan. Spatial Contortions when you don't want your removal spells dealing you damage. Tech Edge as a one-of can come in, help once again with Urza Saga, etc. EE helps against the faster decks, also helps against Rhinos and Urza Saga tokens. Crucible Worlds, we didn't really run into anything that was trying to blow up our lands, but good place to have that. And then Ratchet Bomb as yet another pseudo EE against, you know, tokens, 1-drops, etc. So Shocktroopa is pretty good at building this deck. He's been doing it for quite a while. I can't unfortunately do his masterpiece justice, but we end up 3-2 in the league overall. 2-1 in the matchups you saw, or yeah, 2-1 in the matchups you saw. Our other matches off camera was against Jeskai Breach and against the Mono Black Burn deck that's been popping up every now and again. That matchup wasn't particularly interesting. It's not as good as Boros Burn. I mean to look at the deck seriously at some point. I looked at the primer for Mono Black Burn. It's certainly a deck we'll cover in our various modern decks, but I think it's more of a gimmick than it's legit. But, you know, it does gain a lot of life, I'll give it that, against decks like regular Boros Burn. So, anywho, that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe if you like these playthroughs of all the various modern decks. Kind of working on a combination of getting more content of the tier decks on the channel, while also starting to cover some of the lesser known modern decks. I think on tap coming up soon we'll have the Shining Shoal Humans deck and some actual gameplay for the All Spells. Another deck that popped up recently again was the Coral Knight of Reliquary Retreat to Coral Home combo deck has popped up again. We'll certainly cover that. And there's also just a myriad of other modern decks we haven't done deck guides on or gameplay. So be on the lookout for that. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I hope to see you for the next video.